Hi, I'm Lillian and this is my summer reading wrap up part 2. This video is going to cover all the books I read in the second half of July and then in August. Compared to part 1, it's not quite as many books. I didn't read that much in August. I knew I was going to be starting my new job at the beginning of September, so I was like a little bit stressed and didn't quite have the headspace to read as much as I wanted to. So now I have started said new job, I'm a week in, it's going really well so far, so I'm less stressed now but a lot more busy, so I'm not quite sure what that means for my future reading. But anyway, I'm going to do the same thing as I did with part 1 of my summer reading. I'm going to start with my least favourite books and then work up to my favourite one. So I've got 6 books to talk about, 4 of them are rated 3 stars, 1 book got 4 stars and 1 book got 5 stars. So first of all, I'm going to talk about The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is like a fun thriller I read during the reading rush at the end of July. 3 stars might not seem like a good rating to most people, but I use 3 stars to mean like solid, good, would recommend. I don't read that many thrillers and it's not my favourite genre by any means, so a thriller getting 3 stars from me is still like a very positive thing. This is a murder mystery set on a tiny island off the Irish coast where a wedding is about to take place, and it's got this quite cool structure where you don't even know who the murder victim is until about 95% of the way through the plot, and then you don't know like the murderer until 98% of the way through the plot. So there are kind of like these 2 timelines just a few days apart. One follows the guests as they arrive on the island a couple of days before the wedding and the reception, and sort of them getting to know each other or meeting again after ages and kind of just like being dicks to each other basically. And the second storyline is like the night of the wedding itself, and then the murder and the immediate aftermath, and then the reveal at the end. This structure did do a really good job of like building the tension consistently all the way through till pretty much the end of the book. And also because the book did a pretty good job of giving like practically everyone a motive to want to kill the character that gets murdered, and it was very realistic, I thought, and by the end of it I was like, wow, this person needs to like get murdered already. There were a couple of really good like twist and reveal moments throughout the book. The first major one I did not see coming really, and I really liked it, and then kind of like the last reveal about who the murderer was, I managed to guess like just before it happened, but that was only because the book did a really good job of kind of like laying the clues in a way that like just before it's revealed the reader realises like what they were going for, and it's like, ah. So that was very cleverly done, I thought. I will say that although this book did a better job than other thrillers I've read at, continually building the tension throughout, there is always inevitably the moment where everything is revealed and the tension kind of drops off for like the very last section of the story. And for this one, obviously because the reveal was so close to the end, like that section was very short. But I do kind of wish we'd had maybe 15-20 more pages just to explore more of the aftermath of the murder and then like the reveal of who did it. Quite a lot of the characters I felt like did just vanish, and I was like, wait, what happened to that guy? What happened to these people in the end? And it's just like never really explained, so I wish there'd been like a little bit extra towards the end for that. And I wish we got to see like how some of the characters were now going to go and like sort out their issues and like go on with their lives, because quite a lot, most of the vast majority of the characters were not very likeable. I think there was probably like 2 towards the end that I could stand, and everyone else I was just like, oh, them again. In particular, the groomsmen in the wedding are kind of like buddies who went to like really posh boarding school together, and they are like such arseholes to everyone and each other, and I'm thinking like, why are you friends? Why does anyone put up with you? If I was at this wedding, if I was part of the wedding party and I met you for the first time and they acted like that to me, I'd be like, no, I'm out. But yeah, like it was still a good book. I gave it 3 stars, and then immediately afterwards I read another murder mystery. This was an Agatha Christie book, Peril at End House, which I also gave 3 stars to. So this book follows Poirot and Hastings on a holiday in, I think, Cornwall, where they meet Miss Nick Buckley, who Poirot realises someone is trying to murder, while Nick thinks that she's just survived several freak accidents. Honestly, I had seen the Poirot TV adaptation of this book. I didn't think I had. I picked this because I was like, oh, I've never heard of this story, and then as soon as I like read the synopsis and started to read it, I was like, oh, it's that one. It turns out the TV adaptation I saw sticks very, very closely to the original story, so I did know everything that was going to happen and what the reveal at the end was going to be. But despite all that, I still really liked this book. It's just a classic Agatha Christie murder mystery. I will say that the twist at the end I think is among her best. Obviously I'm basing that mostly on like the Poirot and Marple ITV adaptations I've seen, because this again is the first of her books I've actually read myself. I was a little wary going in because I don't tend to like old-fashioned writing styles. Like I'm counting this as old-fashioned even though it was written in like the 30s or 40s, I think. But in this case, I think the fact that I already knew the story and what was going to happen did help me stay engaged with it, but also that did kind of create a limit on my potential enjoyment for the story. So even though I did have a really good experience reading it, and it reached its like full potential for me, that potential maybe wasn't as high as it could have been. But overall, I would really recommend this for someone who, like me, has never read an Agatha Christie book before and like maybe wants to get into that, so long as you are okay with like slightly older fashioned writing styles. If you're really not okay with older books and you like find them all really boring despite trying really hard to get engaged in them, just watch the TV show. I won't lie, it's great. The adaptation of this one, Peril at End House, with David Suchet, is like really, really good. The next book I have is A Ghost Written by David Mitchell. This is the only book I managed to read for the Tome Topple Readathon run by Sam at Thoughts for Tomes. Even though this technically doesn't meet like the criteria for being a tome at like being over 500 pages, I'm still counting it as a huge achievement because this has sat on my TBR shelf for 5 years and I finally read it. I bought this after reading Cloud Atlas and The Bone Clocks by David Mitchell, and I really enjoyed both of them, and I was like, wow, I'm definitely going to read some more of his books. And then I bought this and Number 9 Dream and Slade House pretty much at the same time, and then they sat on my TBR shelf for 5 years. But finally got to this one, and it is such a weird book. It's hard to describe exactly what it's about. I should say that I did overall have a positive experience. I'm giving it 3 stars. And I'm glad I read it, but like it was a bit weird and I did have some trouble getting into it at the beginning, or more like the entire first half of the book. This is David Mitchell's first book that he ever published, and it's very obvious that it has like the same sort of themes and ideas in it as in Cloud Atlas and The Bone Clocks, and presumably lots of his other books that I haven't read yet. This one is kind of like a series of short stories with like a vague connection between them. They take place all over the world in like Japan, Mongolia, Hong Kong, London, Russia, and a couple of other places I can't remember. And they're like 95% unrelated or seemingly unconnected to the other stories in the book. They often have a brand new protagonist and like characters that are only in that story. They sort of change genre weirdly between stories as well. But overall, there is this kind of sense of connection between them, with emphasis on kind of how random and coincidental yet connected our everyday lives are. Although, like I said, the stories seem pretty much unconnected, particularly the ones at the beginning of the book. The ones later on are like more obviously connected, but like the first 2/3 aren't really connected, except for quite often the protagonist of the new story might like come across the protagonist of the previous story in a way that only the reader realizes, and like this new protagonist just like thinks they're some stranger they like see in a cafe, but the reader recognizes them as, oh, that's the person we were just reading about. Obviously I didn't love like all the chapters in here. The one set in London and Hong Kong I was like not too keen on. My favorite ones were probably the Mongolia section and the one set on Clear Island, I think it's called, which is like the tiny Irish island. Those ones were like really engaging and really compelling. The only problem is they were a lot further towards the end of the book, and so you do have to read kind of at least the first half, in my experience, with this kind of blind faith that hopefully it will pay off. And for me it did, but I can see why a lot of people would probably be tempted to just like give up on this and be like, well, what was that about? I have no idea, it was so weird. I would say that the Mongolia chapter was the one for me that I was like, oh, that's really obviously linked to his book The Bone Clocks. I don't want to spoil it, there's sort of like the same creature, shall we say, kind of being that is the protagonist of the Mongolia chapter in this, and those kind of beings play like a really big role in The Bone Clocks. So I did like that. I sort of recognised it and was like, oh, I understand where this book is going, it's connected. And it was also the Mongolia chapter that sort of solidified this as being science fiction, because a lot of his books are sort of genre defying and you're never really sure, like, is this contemporary, is this sci-fi, is this fantasy even? I would say this book is definitely science fiction, but like in a weird way. Basically, this book is like very complex and subtle in sort of everything it does, and the annoying thing is I've probably missed loads. There's probably loads of stuff in here that like I didn't understand properly, or that just like completely went over my head and I didn't even realise he was trying to say. But it has, yeah, cemented that I do really like David Mitchell's books. I will read more of them in the future. The only problem is people are really weird about David Mitchell books. There's sort of like this cult atmosphere to it, where really hardcore people have this whole like way of reading his books in a specific order that is absolutely ridiculous. It's something like you read the first chapter of Ghost Written, and then you read another book, and then you read like the first and last chapters of Cloud Atlas, and then you come back and you read the second story in here, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to read them in whatever order I want. Thank you very much. So hopefully I won't wait another 5 years to read another of his books. The last 3-star read I have to talk about is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. And shout out to my sister's friend Lily for lending me this when she knew I wanted to read it. This book is really short, and it's about Kaiko, a Japanese woman who works in a convenience store and has done for pretty much her entire adult life. And she finds it really fulfilling, and it's kind of like exactly what she wants to be doing with her days. And she's kind of like the expert at knowing what products to top up when, and what will be most popular at the lunch rush, and how the weather change will mean that certain products are more popular, and all that kind of stuff. And because it gives her a way to interact with customers in like a set, standardized way, because she has quite a lot of trouble in social situations and knowing how to react properly and appropriately to certain things, and like what not to say and do. And Keiko was like such a great character. She's written so perfectly, and so even though she does quite a lot of things and makes decisions I would not make, it's always written in a way that you can perfectly understand exactly why she's doing that, and why she likes the kind of life she has, and why she wants to continue being that way. And so the story kind of follows her. It starts with her like living her normal life, and then there's like a series of events that sort of start to threaten to push her out of her comfort zone and away from this lifestyle that she enjoys so much. And so reading this book was kind of frustrating at times, because it was like, why is everyone being so mean to her? Just like let her live the life she wants to. She's not hurting anyone. She's very happy. She finds it like fulfilling and meaningful. Just like let her do what she wants. It's absolutely fine. But people are weird and like try and pressure her to do like, you know, the right thing, the normal thing, be more normal. And I'm here like, I would fight anyone who is rude to Keiko, honestly. And she's very happy as she is, but she knows there is this like massive pressure for her to conform and be more normal. And then when she does make changes to try and be more normal because she thinks it'll make other people happy, it makes her more unhappy because it's not what she wants to be doing with her life. It is a bit of an odd story, just because the main character is so unusual, and the route the plot takes is a bit like, oh, okay, we're doing that, okay. But I did like it, and I would really recommend it. And the writing is very like fast-paced and snappy, and it's translated fiction, but you can't tell it's translated, so that's like the mark of a really good translation, I think. So yeah, I would really recommend this book. It's so short that even if you don't like it, like you've wasted hardly any of your time on it, so please give it a go. And my 4-star read I have to talk about is A Phoenix First Must Burn, which was edited by Patrice Caldwell. This is an anthology of 16 different pieces of sci-fi or fantasy stories by 16 different black female authors. I really liked this. I've never actually read an anthology before with like multiple different authors. This was kind of an experiment for me. Firstly, I wanted to see if like I actually enjoyed the stories themselves, but also I was kind of treating it as like a taste test of the authors to see if there were any I really loved in particular, and then I could actively seek out more of their books in the future. And so getting to read from like 16 brand new to me authors was just like a very efficient way, I think, to try and broaden my reading horizons. The stories, I loved some more than others, obviously. I think my absolute favourites were The Rules of the Land by Alea Dawn Johnson, a hagiography of Starlight by Samaya Dowd, and then Letting the Right One In by Patrice Caldwell herself. There were unfortunately a couple I didn't like. The two I like really didn't get on with were the very first story in here, which is When Life Hands You a Lemon Fruit Bomb by Amory. And then I also really didn't like The Actress by Danielle Page, but like the vast majority of them I did really enjoy. So even though if I were to go back and look at my ratings for each individual story and then try and work out the average of them for overall, it would probably be like a 3-star. I am giving this one 4 stars because I just think it completely achieved what it set out to do, which was to gather together 16 completely different stories from different authors and sort of present them to the reader to be enjoyed. And I really liked how it did that. I had a really good experience reading them. Even though I didn't enjoy every story as much as I wanted to, it's kind of like each new story had the potential to be amazing, and so it turns out I really like reading anthologies like this, and I'm definitely going to be reading some more in the future. And then my last book I have to talk about is my only 5-star read, which is The Authoritative Calvin and Hobbes by Bill, I don't know if it's Watterson or Watterson, like to this day I don't know how to pronounce his name, but you should all know that Calvin and Hobbes is amazing, and I love this book as much as I've always loved them. I have enjoyed reading the Calvin Hobbes cartoons, honestly, ever since I was little. It's an American comic strip and it's really not that well known in the UK, so if you are from the UK and you think this sounds at all interesting, like, please read it. I wish everyone knew what this was. Calvin is kind of like this annoying, creative, precocious 6-year-old, and Hobbes is his toy tiger. And I really like how it's illustrated, in that when it's just Calvin Hobbes, Hobbes is shown to be like a full-on like real tiger, but when anyone else is there, like his parents or Susie Durkins or his teacher, Hobbes is drawn as a toy. But like, it's not really that deep, it's mostly just fun. And it's also kind of like a ridiculous parody of a lots of situations. There's sort of like this running joke where Calvin will talk to his dad and tell him that he's very low down in the polls for like the dad election and this is what he should be changing if he wants to get re-elected. And then like Calvin and Hobbes will have sort of philosophical discussions with each other, which are often kind of ridiculous, but not always. There's actually some like really sweet moments in here. But then we also get just sort of everyday stories about Calvin like hating his babysitter and not wanting to go to school, or like going camping with his family and stuff like that. So yeah, this was just like really fun to revisit, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. So yeah, those are the last couple of things I read this summer. At the moment I'm reading Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas. This is me continuing my reread of the Throne of Glass series, about 100 pages in. I'm hoping it's going to be like another 3-star read, even though when I originally read it I gave it 5 stars. But on the reread of the series, like, I'm learning that they're really not as good as I remember them being. But other than that, I have no idea what I'm going to read this autumn, but I'm hoping I enjoy it either way. So thanks for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!